The women of our family can achieve immortality. On the day they come of age, they must find a ruthless villain who deeply loves them, rip out his black heart with their own hands, and complete the ritual to gain eternal life. If they fail, or if no such person appears, they will not survive the next day. Therefore, many young women in our family meet their end in unexpected ways on the day they come of age, making it almost impossible to avoid. All because they couldn't find a suitable substitute. Of course, there are also those who, in the midst of this struggle, fall in love and choose to sacrifice their own lives rather than harm the other person. Like my dear Luna Sterling. She had already found a ruthless villain willing to die in her place, but at the crucial moment, she chose to give up, sparing the villain's life, and she herself died in a car accident the next day. As she lay dying, she held my hand and said, "Nova, I don't regret it." And I, Lynn Nova. Just 3 months away from turning 18. Immortality or death? It all depends on whether I can find a black heart that beats for me within these 3 months. So, I set my sights on a marriage agency. Miss Sterling, your request is indeed quite unique. Mrs. Penelope Gold, who was usually smooth-talking, stuttered slightly after hearing my request. Her gaze toward me carried a hint of unease. My so-called requirement was simply that the matchmaking candidate must have a criminal record, preferably someone recently released from prison. The more serious the crime, the better it suited my needs. Normal people go on blind dates hoping for someone as good as possible. Someone like me, who demands a criminal record right off the bat, must be a first for Mrs. Penelope Gold. Seeing her hesitate, I quickly pulled out a wad of cash from my bag and shoved it into Mrs. Penelope Gold's hand. Don't worry about the details. Just find me someone. Seeing the thick stack of cash in her hands, Mrs. Penelope Gold immediately broke into a smile and stuffed the money into her bag. Then she patted her chest and assured me, "Don't worry, I'll make sure you're satisfied." I looked at her, then at the marriage agency behind her. As the saying goes, money can make the devil grind the mill. The women in our family who survive past adulthood possess immortality, allowing them to work in dangerous industries to amass a substantial fortune. Therefore, money is the last thing I lack. Rather than go through the trouble of finding a substitute myself, it's better to leave the job to the professionals. As long as the money is right. Why would I worry about finding the black heart I desire? This match is very honest, he won't run off anywhere. Mrs. Penelope Gold pointed at the match sitting across from me, saying this without batting an eyelid. I glanced down at the match. He was sitting in a wheelchair, both legs amputated above the knee. He certainly wouldn't run off anywhere. Mrs. Penelope Gold handed me his profile. Caleb Murphy, 27 years old. 2 years ago, he climbed 12 stories because he was peeping on a girl taking a shower. He lost his footing and fell straight down. Luckily, he survived, though he lost both legs. Obsessed with lust. Just like now, he was staring at me with a lecherous expression, his eyes constantly wandering to places they shouldn't be. Just one glance, and I knew this man didn't meet my standards. Those with black hearts are devoted to evil, even willing to sacrifice their own lives. And someone as lust-driven as him is far from sufficient to complete the ritual. Seeing my silence, Mrs. Penelope Gold remained unfazed, pointing at his shriveled calf and saying to me, "You wouldn't notice it normally, but when he's desperate, he can even jump a few times while on the wheelchair." After saying that, she gestured to the man, "There, let's put on a show for Miss Sterling." I asked for someone with a criminal record, not a shameless pervert. The first one was rejected. Mrs. Penelope Gold nodded thoughtfully. "It seems you prefer men who are family-oriented." She immediately found me another match. This man is very family-oriented and can cook delicious meals. Mrs. Penelope Gold, fearing I wouldn't believe her, dragged me straight to the matchmaker's house and had him immediately demonstrate his special skill. The dish was indeed delicious, with a perfect balance of flavor, aroma, and appearance. The only catch was that the matchmaker was one-armed, and the description had been rather abstract. I forced a smile. Indeed, it's a one-handed dish. Mrs. Penelope Gold chuckled and introduced him. Silas Graves got into a fight with someone who was coming at him with a knife. Silas Graves lost his arm in the fight. But he's a good person, he only fought to save a young girl who was about to be bullied. In the end, he stabbed the other guy in the abdomen with the knife and was sentenced to a few years in prison. Mrs. Penelope Gold spoke with a touch of regret in her voice. seeing injustice and stepping in to help. In the end, he lost an arm and spent several years in prison for accidentally injuring someone. Helping others. I shook my head decisively. No, let's try someone else. She introduced 4 or 5 more potential matches. None of them met my criteria. Though they all had criminal records, most were accidental. Some were young and reckless, but had since reformed. In any case, none of them met my requirements. With only 2 months left, I slipped Mrs. Penelope Gold a thick stack of cash and bluntly said, "Someone who's spilled blood and taken a life." Mrs. Penelope Gold's eyes widened. But due to the stack of cash, she nodded heavily and assured me, "This time, I guarantee you'll be satisfied." The 7th match she introduced was rare in that he was physically intact. She excitedly came to me to boast, "This time I've really found a good one for you. If you're still not satisfied, your standards are just too high." I scrutinized the man in front of me. His limbs were indeed intact, and he could speak. He looked perfectly normal, so normal that it felt abnormal. Mrs. Penelope Gold rattled off a string of his praises before suddenly stopping, taking my hand, and speaking earnestly, "Orion Blackwood is a really good person. Though he was a murderer in the past, he's reformed now." A murderer? I struggled to suppress my excitement and maintained a calm expression. Seeing my silence, Mrs. Penelope Gold grew anxious. "Although he killed someone before, he doesn't kill anymore. You can rest assured, you two can live together until you're 99. She seemed worried I might be scared and immediately began explaining Orion Blackwood's background. Orion Blackwood's parents divorced when he was very young, and he lived with his father. He was an outstanding student from a young age, even deserving the title of genius. Later, when he was in middle school, he accidentally killed his abusive stepmother, and it was witnessed by a neighbor. Although it was an accident, even though he wasn't an adult, he was sentenced to 3 years for manslaughter. He was released in July this year. At 18, he wasn't in a hurry to get married, but having served time in prison made finding a wife more challenging. So his father had been arranging blind dates for him since his release, fearing he might end up alone. After hearing Mrs. Penelope Gold's account, I looked at Orion Blackwood again. From the moment he sat down at the table, he kept his head down, speaking only briefly during his introduction. He seemed sensitive and insecure. Plus, his deceptively innocent face, combined with his silence, made it easy to feel a protective urge toward him. He didn't look like someone who would intentionally kill someone. A hint of regret flashed through my mind. The black heart we needed must belong to someone utterly evil. If someone was kind-hearted but accidentally killed someone due to a mistake, they wouldn't meet my criteria. But it doesn't matter. The women of our family can determine whether someone's heart is black by simply holding their hand. Those with black hearts are absolutely ruthless and vicious. So I walked up to him, bent down, and gently touched his hand. I could feel his heart was almost as black as ink. He was ruthless, vicious, and twisted. He was the kind of villain I desperately needed, with not a shred of kindness. I raised my eyes to look at Orion Blackwood. His gaze flickered slightly, and the sensitivity and self-consciousness in his eyes were exposed by my touch, making him look like an innocent person. No one could tell that he was a villain twisted to the core. "Humph, this is getting more interesting. Aren't you afraid of me?" Orion Blackwood spoke first, his voice tinged with distance and curiosity, as I had not yet released his hand. After all, I had just learned he was a murderer. It was an accident, though. But hearing such a story, most people would retreat. Someone like me, who directly grasped his hand, was probably the first. So he was timid and distant. The look in his eyes toward me also held a hint of confusion. "It was just an accident, and you spent 3 years atoning for it. So there's no need to feel inferior. You made a mistake and paid for it. Now you should hold your head high and embrace your brand new future." I deliberately gripped his hand tighter, putting all the practice I'd put into that heartfelt gesture to use. "Don't be afraid. I'll always be here for you." As the words fell, I quickly caught a fleeting glimpse of madness in his eyes. I told Mrs. Penelope Gold that I really liked Orion Blackwood. "Miss Sterling, you don't seem like someone who needs money, and you're quite attractive. Are you sure you want to choose him?" Though money-driven, Mrs. Penelope Gold couldn't resist reminding me, "If you're willing to give me more time, I could actually find you a much better match." I shook my head and glanced at Orion Blackwood, who was still sitting silently in the restaurant. A good-looking face is enough. After sending Mrs. Penelope Gold away, Orion Blackwood and I began our blind date in the restaurant. He kept his head down the entire time. Especially when someone passed by, he would lower his head even more. Humph, he's pretty good at acting. I stood up and sat next to him. Orion Blackwood looked a bit uneasy and glanced at me. Are you really sure you want to give this a try? His pitch-black eyes were like a pool of ink, making it hard to tell what he was thinking. I smiled and took his hand again. Orion Blackwood, let's give dating a try. The news of my successful date with Orion Blackwood reached his father within half a day. On the way home, I received a call from him, inviting me to dinner with Orion Blackwood. I wonder what Miss Sterling sees in my son. At the dinner table, Orion Blackwood's father discreetly sized me up several times. I looked at Orion Blackwood sitting across from me. He was wearing a clean white shirt today, but at only 23, he should have been a sunny and outgoing young man. With some effort, paired with his harmless face, he might have become a campus heartthrob if he had walked around campus. Just call me Nova. Matters of the heart are all about first impressions. Orion Blackwood is so good-looking, and I'm probably just shallow, so I've set my sights on him. I bluntly stated the reason why I was interested in Orion Blackwood. A teenager who had killed someone, and on our first meeting, I decided to be with him. This must require a reason. So, I gave them the reason they wanted. It was his face. As a die-hard face-obsessed person, I fell for Orion Blackwood's face, so I didn't care if he had killed someone before, and I was willing to give it a try. If this were a regular blind date, I'd definitely be called superficial. But Orion Blackwood's father wouldn't. After hearing what I said, he actually sighed in relief. My son has always been good-looking. Lin Xiao. Nova has good taste. If the two of you get along well, your children will definitely be even more handsome. Orion Blackwood's father sounded like he was selling a product. By the end, Orion Blackwood's father stood up with his wine glass, nodded at me, then turned to Orion Blackwood. We're father and son after all. I haven't remarried all these years, waiting for you to get out of prison. Now I've found you a girlfriend. I've repaid everything I owe you. Next month I'm leaving the country. Someone has been waiting for me for 2 years, and I can't let her down. Orion Blackwood, who had remained silent all along, finally raised his head upon hearing his father's words. So, we won't see each other again? His voice was hoarse. Not deliberately deep, but as if he hadn't spoken in a long time and wasn't quite used to it yet. Orion Blackwood's father turned away. Your aunt has been waiting for me for 2 years, and she's now pregnant. You're an adult now, and I don't need you to take care of me. I'll settle abroad from now on. If we don't have to see each other, then don't. After saying this, Orion Blackwood's father downed his bowl of wine. He then took out his wallet to pay the bill and prepared to leave. As he watched his father about to step out of the private room, Orion Blackwood suddenly stood up and repeated his question. Really? We won't see each other again? His father didn't turn around, just stood there with his back to Orion Blackwood. Yes, we won't see each other anymore. After saying that, he walked straight ahead without looking back at Orion Blackwood once more. Today, it seemed like he was inviting me to dinner. In reality, it was just an excuse to get rid of Orion Blackwood, this burden. The private room was suddenly left with only Orion Blackwood and me. I stood up, walked to him, and gripped his hand tightly before slowly kneeling down. Don't worry, I'll always be here for you. He raised his gaze to look at me, forcing a smile that felt bitter. Even my own father doesn't want me, and you fell for me just because of this face? Orion Blackwood's eyes held a hint of scrutiny. I didn't avoid his gaze but looked at him, speaking each word clearly. I, Lin Nova, will always be by your side, until the moment you die. However, Orion Blackwood wasn't the one who died. It was his father. The man who had packed everything with joy, ready to move abroad and settle down with his new wife. He died piece by piece in the apartment. Nothing was missing from the house, but his skin had been stripped off his body, and his bones were shattered into pieces. Especially the collarbone, which was crushed into dust and scattered on the ground. The neighbor who first noticed something was wrong fainted upon seeing the scene inside the house. Even the police, who investigated the scene repeatedly, found no clues. However, due to this incident, other relatives of Orion Blackwood began arriving to help prepare for the funeral. Most of them refused to have any contact with Orion Blackwood. Two younger ones even gathered together, whispering to each other. Then they ran up to Orion Blackwood, mustering their courage to speak. "My mother said you killed someone, your own stepmother." Another boy looked at him with disdain. Maybe he did it this time too. As soon as the words left his mouth, the other relatives and friends standing nearby stepped back several paces, as if Orion Blackwood were some kind of monster, unwilling to have anything to do with him. Orion Blackwood said nothing, just stood there looking at the two young boys in front of him. "They say online that people like you are antisocial and love to take revenge on society. So you killed your stepmother, then your father, who's next?" Teenage boys were always drawn to the macabre, and their words were just as bold. Orion Blackwood's lips curled into a smile as he traced his fingers along their necks. "Next, it's you." His voice was slow and steady, like a ghost in the dead of night. The two boys jumped back in fear and started screaming. Several adults rushed over to protect the children and began scolding Orion Blackwood. "The kids were just joking around. Did you really have to scare them like that? You're a murderer, just like your father." The insults were harsh and unpleasant. I stepped forward and stood in front of Orion Blackwood. "If you can't control your own children, I don't mind disciplining them for you. Why didn't you step forward when they were talking? You're just bullying the weak." The two women glared at me. Soon, other middle-aged men arrived, smoking cigarettes, and apologized. "Orion Blackwood, you know our He family isn't very prosperous. Now that this has happened, the Blackwood clan shouldn't return. Consider yourself no longer part of the He family." The man speaking was Orion Blackwood's uncle. As the leader of this group of relatives and friends, he could say such words in this situation, clearly indicating that they had already discussed this beforehand and were now simply informing Orion Blackwood directly. "What do you mean? Orion Blackwood bears the surname He. Why can't he return to his hometown? During festivals, one must return to one's hometown to pay respects to one's ancestors. Now you're cutting him off from the He family. Do you intend to disown him completely?" Before Orion Blackwood could speak, I couldn't help but interject. This statement effectively meant expelling Orion Blackwood from the family registry. Even during festivals when ancestral worship is required, Orion Blackwood would no longer be permitted to return. It was as though he had been completely expelled from the He family. Harold Blackwood took a deep drag on his cigarette, then stood before me, his words tinged with apology yet resolute. "What can I do? I have to consider the other members of the He family, don't I? As his potential spouse, you know his family situation. Losing a stepmother isn't enough, now his own father is gone. The rumors outside are saying he's cursed. If he returns to our He family, what if he brings misfortune to others?" Harold Blackwood's words grew more resolute with each sentence. The two boys earlier were his grandsons, whom he was tightly shielding behind him, clearly doting on them. He was clearly afraid that Orion Blackwood's ill fortune would harm his two precious grandsons. After speaking, Harold Blackwood pulled out a bank card from his pocket. "The ancestral home of your family in the village, you must never return there. Consider it sold to our entire village. Here's $20,000, enough to sever all ties between us." Without waiting for a response, he shoved the card into Orion Blackwood's hand. Then, leading a large crowd, he presided over the funeral, buried the body in the grave, and after a brief ceremony, everyone boarded the buses and left. It was as though they had never been there at all. Orion Blackwood spoke from behind me. "They're all right. I killed my stepmother with my own hands, and now I've caused my father's death. Are you really sure you want to be with me?" I turned to look at him. He was still clutching the bank card tightly in his hand. That card had severed all ties between him and his family. From now on, he would have no one else to rely on besides me. "Orion Blackwood, I'll always be by your side. Until the moment of death." I accompanied Orion Blackwood to his father's grave again. "You don't seem very sad." Orion Blackwood's eyes showed no emotion. Even though the man who shared his blood had become a grave, he only looked down on it, showing no sign of emotion. We stood side by side at his father's grave. He turned his head to look at me. "Lynn Nova, are you really sure you want to stay with me forever?" He seemed fixated on this question, asking it over and over again. He asked seriously, and I answered just as seriously, raising my finger to the sky and swearing, "Yes, We will always be together. Unless you die or I die, we will never part. This was a promise I could definitely make to him. Orion Blackwood smiled. Right there at his father's grave, he took my hand and intertwined our fingers. All right, then we'll never part. After that night, Orion Blackwood was truly alone with me. The matchmaking was successful, and we could now be considered boyfriend and girlfriend. Like any normal couple. Orion Blackwood and I go on dates several times a week, sometimes eating out or watching movies, other times going camping in the suburbs. In short, our relationship is growing closer, and everything is moving in the right direction. However, I discovered an odd habit of Orion Blackwood's. Orion Blackwood, why are you staring at someone else again? After the movie, we held hands as we left the mall. We were about to take a walk home, but occasionally people passed by, especially women dressed lightly, and Orion Blackwood couldn't help but glance at them a few extra times. I held his hand, which was still as black as ink. What was he thinking? Was he imagining how to slit those girls' throats with a knife? He must have noticed the curiosity in my eyes. Instead of brushing it off like before, he pointed at a girl who had just walked past us. She was wearing a low-cut dress, revealing her delicate, beautiful collarbone. Do you know what the most beautiful part of a person's body is? He slowly shifted his gaze back to me. The most beautiful part? I suddenly recalled his father's gruesome death, his bones shattered inch by inch. As the saying goes, beauty lies in the bones, not the skin. So the most beautiful part of a person should be their bones. Bones? Orion Blackwood chuckled, you're smart. After speaking, he reached out and gently rubbed my head. His hand slid down slowly along my hair, moving down my face, across my chin, and down to my throat. The icy, bone-chilling sensation made me shiver uncontrollably. But I remained standing still. Orion Blackwood's hand paused on my neck for a few seconds before continuing downward, gently lifting the hem of my coat and placing his fingers on my collarbone. There are 206 bones in the human body. And the most beautiful one is the collarbone, also known as the beauty bone. The beauty bone? I lowered my head and smiled softly, then pulled my jacket down lower, exposing my collarbone completely. I tiptoed closer to Orion Blackwood. Do you think my collarbone is beautiful? He stared intently at my collarbone, his gaze shifting from admiration to a hint of obsession and madness. But it was only for an instant before he returned to his usual composure. Orion Blackwood lowered his head and gently kissed my collarbone. Beautiful. Nova's collarbone is the most beautiful. From then on, every time we went out, I would deliberately choose clothes that revealed my collarbone. I watched Orion Blackwood's gaze, which started with occasional flickers and gradually grew fiery. Love, it just happens without any reason. Orion Blackwood originally lived in a place his father had rented for him. Now that this had happened, apart from that card, he had no money left. He had already spent 3 years in prison, and now that he was out, he was unfamiliar with everything. He couldn't go back to his hometown, so he was completely alone. I let him move into my house. Nova, is that okay? He hesitated, his backpack containing all his belongings. I gripped his hand tightly and nodded firmly. Since we promised to be together forever, we must never part from now on. Orion Blackwood now lives in the room next to mine. He's very hardworking. Whether it's doing laundry, cooking, or sweeping and mopping the floor, he's already tidied up the house neatly every morning before I wake up, then prepares a delicious breakfast for me. You'd never guess he was a dangerous criminal. Life was so peaceful that I once thought, if there were no age limit and I could forget the blood on his hands, we'd be just like an ordinary couple living together. But as days passed, I could sense he was starting to develop feelings for me. After all, he had nothing now. The only thing he could hold on to was me. Orion Blackwood's 18th birthday was a month before mine. I went out early in the morning to buy him a cake, wanting to spend an unforgettable birthday with him. He was very happy, his eyes reddening. Then he tightly held my hand, and under the glow of the candles, the love in his eyes for me grew deeper. Nova, this is the first birthday I've had since I was 7. Before he was 7, he had loving parents. Though the malignant genes in his blood were present, they were eventually suppressed. However, after his mother's sudden death and his father's remarriage, that incident, still unknown to this day, was it truly an accident, or a murder? I have never known the truth. It was only after he turned 15 that he spent the next 3 years in prison. Orion Blackwood reached out and pulled me into his arms, gazing at the flickering candlelight before us. He asked, "I remember your birthday is next month." I nodded. "But my family has never celebrated my birthday." The girls of the Sterling family never celebrate their birthdays before turning 18. On their 18th birthday, there is something far more important than celebrating their birthday. If they succeed, they can celebrate as many birthdays as they want in the years to come. But if they fail, they are erased from existence, as if they had never been born. Birthdays are a privilege reserved for the victors. Losers have no such right. Perhaps noticing my silence, Orion Blackwood didn't ask any more questions. But starting the next day, he would get up early, make breakfast, and leave a note saying he had to go out. This went on for several days, with him coming home late every night, for over a week. Finally, he carefully placed a box in front of me. Inside was a beautiful silver necklace with a teardrop design, something that looked very elegant. The money for this necklace was earned by working extra jobs over the past week. Consider it a belated birthday gift. I'll work hard to earn more and give you even more in the future. He spoke sincerely, then personally fastened the necklace around my neck. As his fingers glided over my collarbone, he couldn't resist lowering his head to gently kiss the spot, his eyes filled with sincerity. Thus, another week passed in peace. Orion Blackwood and I got along very well. Sometimes, on a whim, I would try to cook lunch. However, I had overestimated my cooking skills, and after cooking a plate of blackened vegetables, I decided to give up. "Nova, why didn't you call me to cook?" Orion Blackwood embraced me from behind, kissing my neck twice. He gradually moved downward, gently rubbing my collarbone, which was dotted with red marks from his passionate embrace the night before. "I wanted to cook for you, but I realized I couldn't." I turned around in his arms, facing him directly, and looked up at Orion Blackwood before me. Over the past few days, Orion Blackwood had become much more lively and considerate, preparing all 3 meals himself every day. It was completely unimaginable that he was a villain. "Since you don't know how, I'll take care of it from now on. Nova's hands aren't meant for cooking." Orion Blackwood let go of me and began preparing lunch. I was about to offer to help, but before I could speak, the phone in my pocket suddenly rang. A ding sound. It was the specially set text message notification tone. My body stiffened, and I didn't immediately take out my phone. "What's wrong?" Orion Blackwood was always on high alert. Even the slightest unusual behavior would catch his attention in an instant. Even now, when I didn't immediately open my phone to check the message, he could sense something was off. Under his watchful gaze, I took my phone out of my pocket and opened the message. It only had 5 simple words: "Time is running out. Not much time left, less than 10 days. Orion Blackwood was still holding the kitchen knife, with half a piece of meat on the cutting board. He raised the knife and looked around, pointing at the phone screen with his other finger. "Nova, can you tell me what time is running out?" The knife was swaying back and forth in front of me. It felt like the next moment, the knife could slice through my throat, and hot blood would flow out. Or is it Nova leaving me? I took a deep breath and quickly wrapped my arms around his waist, burying my head against his chest, exposing my most vulnerable neck. "How could I ever leave you?" He lowered his gaze to look at me, but the knife in his hand remained unlowered. I slowly raised my hand, took the knife from his grasp, and placed it back on the cutting board. "Orion Blackwood, we're going to stay together forever." After that text message, Orion Blackwood didn't ask me again about the time, but instead chose a sunny weekend and said he wanted to take me camping in the countryside. The camping spot was chosen by Orion Blackwood. It was on a hillside in the countryside, with no one around, but the view was quite nice when looking down from halfway up the hill. There was no one else there, just me and Orion Blackwood. Orion Blackwood was very skilled with his hands. He quickly set up the tent and started fiddling with the barbecue grill outside. I sat on a chair outside the tent. The cell phone signal was poor, so I couldn't use my phone. I picked up the book to read. Orion Blackwood walked over, bent down, and kissed my cheek. "Nova, I'll go gather some more firewood. Stay here and wait for me. Don't wander off, okay?" I nodded and watched him leave. Less than 2 minutes later, that distinctive ringtone sounded again. This time, it wasn't a text message but a phone call. The urgent ringtone seemed to be urging me to answer quickly. I didn't hesitate, confirmed no one was around, and answered the call. You don't need to keep reminding me about the time. I spoke first. There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by a dismissive laugh. Lynn Nova, I see you've gotten a bit too cocky. Don't forget how Luna Sterling died, and don't forget that you're after a black heart. You should know better than anyone what kind of man he is. If you're willing to risk your life for some fleeting love, that's just plain stupid. She unleashed a torrent of insults at me. I didn't get angry, but instead held the phone and continued, Aunt Drusilla, it's my choice. If you have time to worry about me here, you should think about your precious daughter. She still hasn't found a scapegoat yet, has she? After saying that, I didn't give her a chance to speak and quickly hung up the phone. At the same time, Orion Blackwood appeared in front of me with some firewood he had gathered from the nearby forest. He looked at the phone in my hand and asked casually, Who were you talking to just now? I waved the phone at him, my Aunt Drusilla. She asked where I was. He put down the firewood, sat down on the chair in front of me, held my hand, and looked at me with extreme tenderness. Speaking of which, I don't even know who's in your family. Orion Blackwood had never asked about my family before. This was the first time. If you want to meet my family, I'll take you home in a couple of days. How about that? He pulled his hand away and continued fiddling with the firewood he had just picked up. In a while, after next year, I'll take you home to meet my parents. That's right. I had mentioned several times before that I wanted him to come home with me. Orion Blackwood refused, and when I pressed him, he said he felt he would bring bad luck to those around him. So he didn't want my family to meet him. He was also afraid that my parents wouldn't approve of us being together. He seemed to really like me. What about me? Was I really going to kill someone who loved me so much? When we noticed the landslide, it was already late at night, almost time to sleep. The weather forecast had predicted clear skies, but by evening, it started to drizzle. Rain wasn't a big deal. But we were camping on a hillside, and the mountain wasn't very stable. After the rain, there was a small chance of a landslide, which could bring unknown dangers. Through the blanket, I could faintly feel the ground trembling. Landslide? Orion Blackwood and I exchanged glances. He quickly stood up and pulled me out of the tent. The ground was shaking more and more violently, and our earlier suspicions were slowly becoming reality. As we opened the tent flap and stepped outside, the ground shook even more violently. We need to get down the mountain immediately. Orion Blackwood grabbed my hand and started running down the mountain. We had nothing with us except our phones. In the pitch-black night, we felt the rhythm of the landslide while frantically running down the mountain. However, it was too dark all around us. Plus, it had rained in the evening, so there was no moonlight. Using the faint light from our phones, we stumbled forward, sometimes unable to see the path ahead. We tripped over branches lying on the ground and nearly fell off the small cliff beside us. Be careful. Orion Blackwood quickly reached out and grabbed me, then gripped my hand even tighter. My heart was pounding, and I didn't want to die here. Nova, hold on tight. Orion Blackwood shielded me in his arms, and whenever small pebbles fell, he would block them for me, letting them hit his body without uttering a sound. We didn't know how long we had been fleeing. The rain grew heavier, making the mountain path treacherous. At times, we stumbled into areas where the mountainside began to collapse, nearly burying us several times, but Orion Blackwood held me tightly the entire time. As we neared the foot of the mountain, we spotted a few lights on the road ahead, but before I could wave for help, the ground began to tremble violently, and a deafening roar engulfed us once more. Turning around, I saw a large section of the mountain crumbling, rolling down like a snowball, heading straight toward Orion Blackwood and me. Nova! Orion Blackwood shouted my name, then pulled me into his arms. Orion Blackwood's shoulder had a severe abrasion. He had been hit by a rock that had slid down the mountain while protecting me. The wound on his shoulder was now a bloody mess. His clothes were stuck to the wound, making it difficult to tear them off. Looking at the wound on his shoulder, I thought about how he had risked his life to protect me during the landslide, valuing my life more than his own, and I couldn't help but tear up. Earlier on the mountain, if he hadn't cared about me, he could have escaped safely. A ruthless criminal, willing to value my life more than his own, even at the cost of his own life. How could I not be moved? No wonder, even with the allure of immortality, many women in our family are willing to give up their lives for love, just to spend those few precious moments with the one they love. Even if, after turning 18, all that awaits them is endless darkness and death. Nova, why are you crying? His lips were pale, but he forced himself to sit up and used his uninjured hand to tuck the strands of hair from my forehead. The emergency room was crowded. The doctors were overwhelmed, and Orion Blackwood had numerous wounds, large and small, including minor scrapes. I had obtained some ointment and was about to tend to his smaller injuries first. My eyes were red, and my hands were trembling uncontrollably. As I applied the ointment, I saw the white cream on his wounds. He was in so much pain that sweat beaded on his forehead, but he endured it without uttering a word. If it weren't for protecting me, you wouldn't have been injured this badly. My voice was choked up, and it took me a while to stammer out those simple words. He smiled, reached out, and ruffled my hair. You're my girlfriend, the only person in this world who would rely on me. If I don't protect you, am I supposed to just watch you die in front of me? I looked up at him, and his eyes were filled with nothing but me. He truly loved me. Just because I chose to stay by his side when everyone else despised and rejected him, he had given me his heart. Even though he was so flawed, he could still react instinctively to protect me in the most dangerous moment. I couldn't help but hug him. Orion Blackwood, I love you so much. He wrapped his other, uninjured arm around me tightly. Yes, I love you too. Perhaps it was at that moment that all the emotions pent up inside me burst forth. And that distinctive ringtone sounded again in the midst of such an ambiguous atmosphere, persistent and unyielding. This time, I held the phone tightly, hesitating, unsure whether to answer it. Aunt Drusilla is calling you. Why aren't you answering? Orion Blackwood looked at me with genuine sincerity. From the moment we met, setting aside all external factors, he had truly been sincere in his feelings for me, treating me as his only lifeline. So, could I really do something so cruel? I was torn, utterly torn. And the ringtone kept ringing, urging me to make a decision quickly. Nova, are you hiding something from me? Orion Blackwood is truly the smartest man I've ever met. With just a few phone calls and text messages, he had already begun to piece together the truth that others couldn't. Should I continue to hide it from him? I looked up at Orion Blackwood, the man who had hurt himself to protect me. Could I learn from Luna Sterling and try to give him my heart? I haven't even given him enough trust to feel secure, so how could he possibly love me completely? The phone rang suddenly. At the same moment, I made a decision. Orion Blackwood, I have a secret to tell you. It took me 10 minutes to reveal the greatest secret of our family, passed down through generations. Including how to gradually capture that black heart, how I struggled and regretted throughout the process, and how I eventually decided to give up everything and just stay by his side. Or perhaps, to spare him worry, I didn't tell Orion Blackwood that if I couldn't remove that heart within the specified time, I would die the next day. I kept this from him. It was as if I was trying to enjoy these final moments to the fullest. Orion Blackwood listened to my words in silence for a very long time, so long that I thought he didn't believe a word I said. But he didn't. The corners of his lips curled into a smile, and his gaze grew deeper, filled with trusting love, warming my heart. Nova, you're willing to give up immortality to love me. I'm truly moved. So I've decided that I will never leave you for the rest of my life. This was the first time he had ever made such a solemn promise to me. In the past, it was always me saying I would never leave him. Now, finally, he was making that promise to me. Orion Blackwood, I've told you my greatest secret. From now on, you must never betray me, okay? I had revealed my true feelings, and from now on, would have nothing left. He nodded and swore to the heavens. I, Orion Blackwood, will be with you until death do us part. I was completely satisfied. Even if the final outcome was death, at least I had lived a life worth remembering. But, looking at the approaching convoy in the distance, my heart raced, and I was so tense I clung tightly to Orion Blackwood's arm. Orion Blackwood, my family is coming to arrest us. Before the convoy came to a stop, Orion Blackwood didn't let the doctor continue treating his wounds. Instead, he grabbed my arm and pulled me into the nearest vehicle. I didn't have much time left. The Sterling family naturally wanted as many people as possible to achieve immortality. Once, I, Luna Sterling, had the best chance of success, but I chose to give up everything for a man and face my inevitable death. Later, it was Aunt Drusilla's eldest daughter. Although she found the black heart, she realized at the moment the ritual began that the man did not truly love her, so the ritual failed. Now it's my turn, and the Sterling family naturally hopes to help me succeed. But I don't want to succeed. I just want to be with Orion Blackwood, enjoying these few moments we have together. This is the least we can do for each other. The convoy is still following us. I glanced at the dozens of cars on the main road, all belonging to the Sterling family, trying to help me bring Orion Blackwood back. Orion Blackwood, I just want to be with you. To show my determination, I even threw the phone I had been carrying with me out the window in front of Orion Blackwood. The phone hit the concrete and shattered into pieces. Now I truly have nothing left. Just like Orion Blackwood. We only have each other left. Orion Blackwood drove the car, glancing at my actions and unable to resist looking at me. His gaze was still as deep as ever, but this time, the love in his eyes was even more evident. He gripped my hand tightly and said seriously, "Nova, we absolutely must not part. Where are we?" Orion Blackwood drove for over 10 hours before finally stopping at a villa located halfway up a mountainside. The dozens of other cars had all been left behind. This place was extremely secluded, so much so that if the villa's owner hadn't come here, no one else would ever discover this hidden gem. This place will be our home from now on. He held my hand tightly and led me into the villa. The villa looked like it hadn't been inhabited for a long time, with a layer of dust everywhere. I couldn't help but cough as soon as I entered. But I didn't forget the wounds on Orion Blackwood's arms. When we escaped from the hospital, I had specifically taken several tubes of ointment. Now that we didn't have to keep running, I quickly pulled Orion Blackwood down to sit, and continued to apply medicine to his wounds that hadn't been treated yet. These wounds need to be treated as soon as possible. If they get infected and inflamed, I'll feel so guilty I'll die. I carefully applied the ointment to his wounds, using up both tubes. Seeing that all his wounds were now properly treated, I finally let out a sigh of relief. Perhaps because of what I said, Orion Blackwood let me continue, and it took nearly half an hour to finish applying the ointment. The villa was very large. The first floor alone had numerous rooms. After finishing treating Orion Blackwood, he told me to rest temporarily in the living room on the first floor while he went to prepare something to eat for me. There were indeed many rooms. Most of them were locked, and the few that could be opened were guest rooms that appeared to have never been inhabited. But one of them. Orion Blackwood, why are there so many torture devices in this room? The room was filled with torture devices, some of which still had bloodstains that had been eroded by time. The entire room was gloomy, and stepping inside made one feel uneasy. I had just finished speaking. Orion Blackwood, who should have been in the kitchen preparing food, was now standing behind me. I took a step back, and my head collided with his chest. The previous owner of this house had a collection hobby, and many of the items here have significant collectible value, so I haven't touched anything in this room. Orion Blackwood explained to me in a gentle tone. I nodded, not thinking much of it. Orion Blackwood took my hand and led me out of the room, then sat down at the dining table on the first floor. He personally served me a bowl of soup. You're too thin, you need to gain some weight. Orion Blackwood is the best to me. I took the bowl of soup, smelled it, and looked up at Orion Blackwood. Just as I was about to drink it, Orion Blackwood suddenly spoke. Nova, do you really love me? The spoon in my hand froze, and I didn't rush to drink the soup. Instead, I looked at Orion Blackwood, who was stubbornly demanding an answer. What about you? Orion Blackwood, how much do you love me? I had abandoned everything, even my own life, just to get an answer. So I didn't want to be disappointed. Orion Blackwood raised his other hand, pointing to the sky and swearing, I, Orion Blackwood, deeply love Lynn Nova. That's good. He really loves me. So I drank the soup with peace of mind. It felt like I had slept for a long time. When I woke up, I found myself lying in that torture chamber, surrounded by weathered walls with no windows or exits, and my limbs were all chained. I could stand up and take a few steps, but the chains clanged with every movement. Almost instantly, I guessed who was responsible. Nova, we promised never to part, but life is full of unexpected twists. How could I have foreseen this? Orion Blackwood had changed into a different outfit, a black trench coat with numerous dark brown stains. As I drew closer, I faintly detected the scent of blood. The smile on his lips was eerily different from his usual expression. The obsession and madness in his eyes made him look like a complete madman. So, you're going to kill me? My voice was trembling. Orion Blackwood walked up to me, then knelt down, reached out, and pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly that I almost couldn't breathe. He finally let go, then cupped my face, forcing me to look up at him. Death is not the end, it is a new beginning. After I dissect you, I will personally extract the beautiful bones that have captivated me and keep them with me. This way, we will never be separated. He laughed, his laughter growing more. Orion Blackwood, you really intend to kill me? You've lost your mind. I nearly screamed in frustration. Orion Blackwood showed no sign of anger on his face. Instead, he slowly sank into his memories and said, there was once a woman who was very kind to me, truly kind. But I was obsessed with her beautiful bones, so I plotted for years to dig out that bone. Unfortunately, an accident happened, and someone saw it. I regretted it for so many years, but finally, I found you. Orion Blackwood's hand gently brushed across my cheek, finally resting on my collarbone. My Nova, you are the person who loves me most in this world. So your beauty bone will also be the best bone in this world. After saying that, he raised the sharp knife in his hand and slowly aimed it at my collarbone. Orion Blackwood, do you really love me? My limbs were bound, and I couldn't move at all. I just kept crying, like a madwoman, still wanting that ridiculous answer. Orion Blackwood's knife paused slightly, then he lowered his head and kissed my forehead with utmost devotion. He said, Lynn Nova, I love you very much, and I will always, only love you. With that, I felt at ease. I glanced at the clock on the wall. There were only 2 minutes left until midnight. Everything would be reset. The sharp knife, just as it was about to slice through my skin, seemed to slip from his grip and fell to the ground. Orion Blackwood fell backward, landing stiffly on the ground. His limbs were completely limp, and his blood-red eyes betrayed confusion and disbelief. I glanced at the iron chain on my wrist, then reached into my hairpin and pulled out a piece of wire. After fiddling with it for a few seconds, the lock on the chain came undone. This time, it was my turn to stand up and look down at Orion Blackwood. This is the first time in my life I've ever served someone. I spent hours applying all that medicine to your entire body. Thinking about it now, it was quite a hassle. With those words spoken, what else was there to understand? So, from start to finish, you've only ever used me. Orion Blackwood spoke with certainty, not a single doubt in his voice. I smiled, and you didn't use me at all? The carefully planned camping trip, why did it happen to coincide with a landslide? Was it to kill me then? Or did you intentionally push me into a corner so you could play the hero and make me fall completely in love with you? From the very beginning, we've been calculating each other. Orion Blackwood was also very calm at that moment, lying on the ground and staring at me as if I were a masterpiece. Lynn Nova, I never thought I'd end up falling into your hands. I picked a knife from the table, finally choosing a small, elegant one sharp enough that just a light touch of my fingertip drew a bloody cut. As it turns out, never fall in love with anyone. Emotions are a weakness, they only harm lives and serve no other purpose. I, Luna Sterling, am like that. Orion Blackwood is the same. So I learned from their mistakes and remained steadfast in my pursuit of immortality. But everything I did was to confirm, time and again, whether Orion Blackwood truly loved me. To clear the final obstacle on my path to immortality. From start to finish, my goal never wavered. I smiled, then bent down to look at him. Orion Blackwood, thank you for loving me. At the stroke of midnight, the knife in my hand swiftly pierced his chest, and with my right hand, I pulled out that black heart, dripping my fingertip blood onto it, completing the ritual. From now on, I will be immortal. Aunt Drusilla's car was waiting for me at the foot of the mountain. I glanced at Orion Blackwood, who was now completely still. After all, we had tested each other. This place would serve as his final resting place. I set the place ablaze, burning it to the ground. This villa, this man, all would be consumed by the flames, leaving no trace behind. I drove down the mountain and saw Aunt Drusilla's car. Aunt Drusilla walked toward me in her high heels, a hint of approval flashing in her eyes. Lynn Nova, you haven't disappointed me. I had always known. The family's second secret, those who fall in love among the immortal will also die. I didn't want to die, so I absolutely couldn't fall in love. I had obtained immortality. This body can heal itself in an extremely short time, no matter how severe the injury. As long as I don't develop feelings for anyone, I can roam this world freely. I am the coldest-hearted member of our family. I watch coldly as many sisters and descendants who have finally obtained immortality, after enduring endless loneliness, begin to crave even the slightest bit of emotion, only to ultimately sacrifice their lives. It's utterly foolish. But a world that never changes is truly boring. Since that's the case, I might as well start looking for some fun for myself. 3 days ago, I came across a report about a serial killer in Portland who targets young women with boyfriends, cutting off their breasts and slowly crushing the bones in their legs. Finally, he drains all their blood. Overnight, the entire city was thrown into panic. Who will be the next victim?